Good evening and welcome to tonight's Kettering Borough Council Planning Committee. This evening, welcome to members, officers and members of the public watchers on YouTube. And just to note that this is a virtual meeting through Zoom. So if we do encounter any technical issues tonight, just please be patient, bear with us, and we'll do our best to get those resolved as soon as we can. And just to make it clear, I'll call all speakers by their name, so whether that is planning officers, members of the committee, or any speakers this evening that are joining us. So I'm not going to go through the protocol for each item, how we'll conduct business this evening. So we'll firstly start with an officer update. Then we'll have the officer report, where the officer will present the report and the screen will be shared. We'll then hear from speakers in order present on our speakers list. We'll go to a member debate where members get a chance to discuss each application. I will state the officer's recommendation to be voted upon. We'll seek a proposer and seconder for that officer's recommendation, after which Callum will conduct a vote by asking each member whether they're for, against or abstain. And once we've reached a decision, I will state that decision and then we'll move to the next item. So can I turn now to Callum, please, to conduct a register of everyone attending tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening all. If members and officers could give a verbal indication that they are present when called, starting with Councillor Adams.
Yeah.
Councillor Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Mitchell.
Here.
Councillor Morton.
Present.
Councillor O'Hara. Councillor Rowley.
Here.
Councillor Fairland.
Here.
And Councillor Titcombe.
Yeah.
Thank you. And from the officers, David Pope, the committee manager. Richard Marlowe, the development team leader.
Yeah.
And James Wilson, the interim head of development services, is also present.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Callum, do we have any apologies, please?
Just one apology, Chair, from Councillor Stanton, and Councillor Edwards is acting as a substitute.
Thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest at all, members? If you could state that now, please. No declarations of interest. Okay, so we turn to minutes on our meeting on the 6th of October this year, as read in the agenda paper. So everyone have
Chair, I think Councillor O'Hara wants to say something.
Yes, certainly, Councillor.
Do we declare an interest as a Burton Latimer Borough Councillor, because that's on the agenda as a second subject tonight?
I don't believe so. You're a town councillor at all? Or?
No. Borough Councillor.
I don't think we tend to declare that, but thanks anyway, Councillor, for that one. So no further declaration of interest. So we turn to our minutes on the 6th of October 2020, as read in the agenda paper. Is everyone happy to sign that as a true record, as read? Great, I'll sign that shortly. I have no urgent items, so I'm just going to turn now to our speakers list this evening. And we have one written statement on item 5.3, KET 2020-0322, 3 Rockingham Way, Burton Latimer. Stephen Hicks, who is the applicant, he submitted a written statement. So no video speakers. That means we'll go 5.1, 5.2, 5.3 this evening in numerological order. So that turns to our first item. So item 5.1, KET 2020-0166, 7 Rodings Close in Kettering.
I believe there's an update on this, Chair.
There is indeed. Richard, did you want to read out the update just while David prepares the presentation?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as a brief update, reference to the rear Juliet balcony has been removed from the description of development to reflect amended plans that were received and consulted on during the course of the application.
Thank you very much indeed. So that is good to go, Richard, when you're ready for that presentation.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this is a proposal for a first floor side extension over the existing garage at 7 Rodings Close in Kettering. So this is the location of the site within the Leisure Village development. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of a close-up of the site. So the site in question is the one with the sort of blue house on it, number 7. Number 6 with the red dot there is the house that's objected to the proposal. So you've got the close there to the east of the site, and to the west you've got the footpath and the balancing pond to the south of the conference centre. Next slide, please. So this is the existing elevations and floor plans of the proposal. You've got a detached dwelling with a substantial double garage to that southern side. Next slide, please. And you'll see on the proposal there, as is included in the papers, that the proposal is for that to be extended at the first floor, providing an ensuite and bedroom accommodation, but also bringing that front elevation of the garage approximately 1.5 metres further forwards into the driveway. Next slide, please. So this is the application site itself. Modern detached property. The garage in question is to the left of that photograph there. Next slide, please. So this is the garage in question, and the objector to the left there, the south, number 6, Rodings Close. So you can see there that the drive, as covered in the report, is quite substantial, in excess of 7 metres in depth, and would remain in excess of 6 metres in depth through the revisions through this proposal. Next slide, please. So this is from the application site. This is the rear elevation of that garage, looking south towards number 6 Rodings Close, the objectors. You can see there that the rear elevations of the buildings have a sort of consistent building line in this area. You can see how the garage there is consistent with the other garages on that part of the close, is set back some considerable distance from the actual rear elevations and the front elevations of the properties themselves. Next slide, please. So this is again, this is looking at the rear of the application site. So the garage is there to the right-hand side. Next slide, please. So this is looking from the important photograph. So this is looking from the neighbours at number 6 Rodings Close. There you can see the application site garage in the middle of the picture with its sort of green shed to the left-hand side of that. The application proposing to obviously extend above that garage, providing first floor accommodation. The concerns from that neighbour, as are covered in the report, are obviously about overlooking light, privacy, and also highways concerns. Next slide, please. So this is an application that came in sort of springtime of this year, and part of the delay in it coming to committee has been a desire from the objecting neighbours for the officers to visit the site internally and appreciate the views from that property, which has obviously been undertaken, as you can see from this photograph. So this is the view from the ground floor. So that's looking across to the rear, the side elevation of the garage itself. So if you can imagine from that picture, looking building straight up above that roof would be where the first floor would be located. Next slide, please. And this is one of the key concerns of the neighbour, which was the views and the impact on the first floor bedroom window. So you can see, as is covered in the report, that the extension would obviously increase the height of that garage noticeably, but it's set in such a position that it's at a sort of very acute angle to that window. And it's sort of only 2.5 metre projection from the rear wall of this property. So they only had a sort of very limiting impact on that, on this application, on the neighbouring property itself. So you can see there the view from that window itself. Next slide, please. Sorry, yeah, you could go back a couple of slides, David, probably just to leave to the proposed. You can leave on that one, actually, potentially that neighbouring one. Forward one, sorry. Forward one, that's it, that's perfect. Yeah, so as was covered in the report, obviously the key areas of concern are those sort of amenity aspects, which are covered in some detail on pages 5 and 6 of the agenda. Because of the orientation of the site, that garage is set to the north of this neighbour that we're looking at, and so there's no impact on sort of loss of light or overshadowing. And the only sort of potential impact is obviously that view that we've seen from that bedroom window about sort of an sense of enclosure or potential sort of overbearing impacts. But given the sort of limited setback of the garage from the neighbour, as is covered in the report, we don't consider those impacts to be so detrimental that they would be unacceptable in this instance. There would be some views from those rear elevations of that first floor bedroom, but they would be to the rearmost part of that neighbour, and consistent with the sort of views that are apparent in those sort of residential properties, and then relationships between adjacent residential premises. and not into the sort of most private, well-used areas of the garden and the patio area of that neighbour. The additional concerns that have been raised about parking are covered on page 6 and 7 of the report. As I've said, bringing the garage forward slightly by about 1.5 meters still provides a driveway which is in excess of the today's parking standards. It also, in bringing the garage forward, extends the garage itself by about 1.5 meters, so it creates a garage which is 7 meters in depth, which is in excess of today's parking standards. Obviously, the widths don't accord with modern parking standards because we're talking of a development that's essentially 20 years old, but the development providing significant space for off-road parking and an increased garage, which would be able to accommodate vehicles, and given the limited sort of additional habitable accommodation that's being generated from this proposal, we don't consider that there's any sort of detriment that would cause to highway safety or parking in that area. Because of those reasons, we've recommended the applications approved subject to conditions.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Richard. Councillor Fallon, please, to start the debate.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Are we just going back to the orientation? So it's on the north, so we're not so worried about the loss of light into that bedroom window. Is that right? Just confirming
Exactly,
that.
yes, yeah. The application
Yeah, and the 2 cars that are on the drive, even when that garage comes forward, that larger car that was positioned on the right, that's still enough room to get it off of the highway, off of the path.
Yeah, it's covered in the report that they would leave a depth of 6.2 meters.
Yeah.
For off the highway for parking. So yes, that would be sufficient. A normal parking space in modern standards is 2.5 by 5 meters.
Yeah. And the Juliet balcony that's been taken off, can that be added back on under permitted development rights, please?
It could in a normal situation, but we've included obviously condition 4 to limiting permitted development rights. And this is
Thank you. That's good. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor. And Richard, does anyone else wish to speak at all in the debate? No? Okay. Councillor Titcombe.
Thank you, Chair. I was just thinking about on the overbearing side of it, that perhaps we could introduce a hipped roof there to lessen the sort of impact of it, so it's not a brick wall straight up to the apex of the roof. A little bit extra work for the chippy there and the roofer, but not too bad, I would think. Just my thoughts of consideration there. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Councillor. Richard, did you wish to comment on Councillor Titcombe's point there?
Yeah, obviously we have to just assess the application as it's come forward. Obviously there's a number of potential roof designs that could be acceptable in that location. Obviously the applicant's chosen the design that's put forward in the agenda. Officers have visited the site and more importantly visited that neighbour, and having taken that assessment, consider this scheme that the applicant has obviously put before us is acceptable. So we can't obviously get into the stage of suggesting other alternatives at this stage.
Okay, thank you for that. So with no one else indicating the James, did I see your hand go up there? Or? No. Okay. With no one else wishing to speak, we have an officer's recommendation to approve the application. Therefore, can I seek a proposer and seconder for that? Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Rowley, thank you. And therefore, I'm going to ask Callum to conduct a vote for the officer's recommendation to approve the application.
Thank you, Chair. So if after I've called your name, if you could indicate if you are for or against the officer's recommendation to approve the application, or if you wish to abstain from the vote, starting with Councillor Adams.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Morton. Councillor Morton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor O'Hara. Is that 4, sorry? Councillor, yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Fairland.
Or
Thank you. And Councillor Titcombe. Councillor Titcombe. Oh, thank you. That decision is unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much
I
indeed for
thought
that, Callum.
I'd switched.
Thanks, Councillor. We did note the vote there. Thank you. So that application is therefore approved. So it takes us to item 5.2, KET 2020-0188, Churchill Way Car Park, Churchill Way in Burton Latimer. I don't believe there's an update on that. No, there isn't. So they're just going to share the screen. We'll be ready shortly, Richard.
Thank you.
It's on its way. Slowly.
Come on. That's great. So that is good to go, Richard, when you're ready for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the application at Churchill Way Car Park in the centre of Burton Latimer. It's an application for refurbishment and enhancement of the car park and recreational open space facilities and demolition of a single-storey building. So this is the application site itself. In red, you can see the existing car park, play area, and former stonemason's yard, which I'll highlight on the aerial photograph on the next slide. To the west, you've got the existing bowls green and sort of open space provision, and to the right, the council offices. Next slide, please. So this is the existing site with the 57 existing car parking spaces, which are very narrow, set in a sort of herringbone fashion. Between that, the car park in the sort of centre of the screen and that play area to the west is a significant ironstone wall which divides the two sort of elements of the site. Next slide, please. So here I've included a aerial photograph of the scheme, gives a bit of context to the proposal. So there you can see the vehicles parked in the existing car park. In the sort of mid-ground, you can see a tarmac area, which is covered in the report as a former stonemason's yard. It has a planning approval from 2015 for car parking provision to be used, which came forward in association with the Bowls Pavilion, which is that sort of terracotta roofed building to the west of that. But the permission wasn't limited, so it could be car parking for any purposes. And then obviously to the west of that, you've got the bowling green. In the sort of centre, you've got the children's play area, and you can see between the children's play area and those parking spaces running north-south is that ironstone wall, which I'll show you in the photographs. I've just included a light green dot there, which shows you the single-storey building, which I'll talk about a bit more detail, but that's the building that's going to be demolished within the proposal. So just so you get an idea there, you can see the access to the northeast from Churchill Way, and that's to remain the access to the new enhanced site. Next slide, please. So here we have the proposal. So we've got the removal of that ironstone wall, an enhanced parking provision, including disabled parking spaces, a number of which, 7 of which are for electric vehicles, disabled bays, and also cycle parking. Then also importantly to the south there, you've got enhanced park, open space area and play provision. So trying to create a real sort of heart to the town, providing the sort of enhanced parking provision, but also important recreational space as well. Obviously that car park as well can be used by those members of the public visiting the town centre, but also as a dual purpose because it's also therefore that's the Bowls Pavilion as well. Next slide, please. So these are some of the details that were included in the planning application. The building on the sort of top 5 photographs there is that building that's going to be demolished. It's a building that's as covered in the report, has some nice ironstone elevations, but also unfortunately the public facing elements of the building are the ones that are covered in sort of Canterbury Spa, sort of pebble dashed render. So the proposal is to demolish that building, retain the ironstone wall, which sits to the north of that building and forms the sort of boundary of that between that building and the rear of number 1 and 3 Churchill Way to the north. So there'll be obviously some retention there, and obviously then moving across, there'll be improved boundary treatments along that northern elevation. To the south, those 3 photographs are photographs within the site, and I'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. Next slide, please. So this is just some of the play provision that's proposed to be included within the proposal. As is covered in the report, it's obviously a proposal that's got the support of the Town Council. It's a site that's got a long history. It was first identified back in 2005 and 6 through the Burton Latimer Urban Design Framework as an area with potential for redevelopment and enhanced car parking and sort of town centre provision. Those proposals have subsequently been incorporated into the emerging site-specific Part 2 local plan. And it's under that context that obviously this scheme has come forward. Obviously, it's a council-owned scheme, but it's obviously working with the Town Council and trying to improve the provision for the good of all the residents of the town. Next slide, please. This shows some of the boundary treatment. So one of the important elements is that and you see that there's conditions 10 and 17 from memory. One of the important elements of the site is that there is this historic ironstone wall through the site, which is of some quality, but unfortunately acts as a sort of barrier to any sort of significant redevelopment on the side. So the proposal and the conditions are clear that in demolishing that wall to allow for the enhanced car park, as much of that sort of ironstone material as possible should be cleaned and reused in the boundary treatments and the walling elsewhere within the site, and those conditions seek to ensure that. Next slide, please. So this is the photographs of the site. So this is standing within the sort of existing car park, looking north towards the parade of shots on Churchill Way. You'll see just behind that sort of light, sort of left-hand side, is that single-storey building, which is proposed to be demolished all bar the north elevation. And to the right there, you can see the existing access point into the car park. And to the left here, partially covered in vegetation, is this ironstone wall that we've been talking about. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is a close-up of that sort of the northern area where there is proposed to be new cycle storage provision. To the left is that building that I've already discussed. Next slide, please. So this is sort of done a spin on the spot from that main entrance. That's the building in the sort of mid-ground, and there you can see sort of to the left-hand side of the photograph that former stonemason's yard, which has a sort of historic permission for car park uses. Next slide, please. So this is unhelpfully looking directly into the sun, but yeah, this is the ironstone wall itself. You'll notice in the photograph there's CCTV camera. Part of the proposal is to move the CCTV camera and upgrade it if necessary, but obviously through removing that wall, the site itself will be opened up, so there's sort of enhancements on the sort of security elements as much as on this sort of physical provision of play equipment and obviously car parking spaces, and that's obviously been commented on by the police. To the left-hand side of that photograph, you can see the sort of existing access to the southern side of the site to the existing play area provision. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is within the stonemason's yard looking north towards the rear of those properties on Churchill Way. Importantly, in the sort of demolition of that building, we've asked for a demolition management plan. So that's obviously covered for two reasons. Firstly, to obviously ensure that there's no or minimal amenity impacts for those adjacent neighbours, but also has been raised by one of those neighbours as a concern, obviously to ensure that there's ongoing security of that sort of boundary or that while that redevelopment and that work takes place. You'll see in the report that we've also covered that there's appropriate boundary treatment along that run there from numbers 1 to 11. So that's secured through the application and through the conditions as well to ensure that there's an appropriate level of boundary treatment between those adjacent neighbours and the new provision on the site. Next slide, please. Yeah, so again, this is that building that's currently used for storage. It's covered. It's got a building with some history, but as you can see, unfortunately, in most of its sort of nicer elevations have over the years been covered in pebble dash, and therefore, what it might be nice to sort of try and retain that building. There's overall in the scheme, there's obviously significant public benefit from the proposal, which would be there for the benefit of the town and obviously wider, and that would outweigh any sort of harm through the loss of this building. Next slide, please. So this is again looking at the stonemasons. This is looking across towards the Bowls Pavilion at the moment. So obviously this would be the area where the enhanced car parking provision is. While we're looking at the trees, there'd be a small number of trees that would be needed to be removed through the works, but we've got a landscaping scheme secured, and obviously important that there's a tree replanting that's undertaken within the site, because obviously that adds to the quality of the area. We don't want it just to be a sort of surface level car park and nothing else. And clearly, as a council, as a developer, you would hope that is obviously forthcoming. Next slide, please. Yeah, and this is obviously within, this is the existing site. This is looking at from the sort of south of the site there. To the left is the existing play area. That's the bottom of the ironstone wall looking back towards the car park. Next slide, please. And this is within so we've got behind us is the bowling green and the Bowls Pavilion. We're looking east there. So that is an existing play area provision, which is obviously going to be moved and enhanced through the proposal. And then in the sort of distance, you've got the rear of the ironstone wall covered in the sort of ivy vegetation there. Next slide, please. You can just go back to the sort of proposed plan, David, please.
That one?
Perfect. Yeah, so as it's covered in the report, there's been a couple of objections or concerns from the neighbours, which obviously we've hopefully dealt with through the report. Other matters that have been raised with obviously pastor colleagues who are leading on this within the council for them to obviously seek to address those more sort of civil and boundary dispute type issues. You'll see that the highways have been consulted 3 times on the scheme and have latterly had no concerns about the proposal. We consider the schemes long overdue. It's consistent with policy and emerging policy, and therefore we've recommended the scheme for approval subject to those safeguarding conditions.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Richard. So far, no blue hands raised. Does anyone wish to speak in the debate? Councillor Edwards, please.
Yeah, just to really say that I actually quite like it. I quite like the design. I'm pleased that we're incorporating things like electrical charging points within the car parking. I think it's good that we're maintaining the wall, and I like the idea of the free flow as well for the children's play area. It does look as though that they've taken into consideration disabled friendly play equipment. But if we could just ensure that that does happen within the park, that would be great. Yeah, I think it looks really good. Just one comment on the objections. I've noticed that there's 3 from kind of outside the area, in fact, out of Kettering Borough. Is that normal?
It's not uncommon. I think whether they're people that have historic linkages with the town, we sometimes find in this type of application. But yeah, it's not uncommon to have comments from further afield, but yes, those 3 I think on this scheme that are significantly distant from the borough. Yes.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor. Councillor Thurland, please.
Yeah, I was going to say about that. I was going to say it's good to see a variety of people coming to visit Burton Latimer, actually. I thought that was really good. And I am so pleased that they're going to change those parking spaces, because I really struggled to get in them, but to open the door and everything. So I think this is really good, and it will enhance the whole of Burton Latimer, I think, and hopefully invite more people from around the country to come and visit us. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. And Councillor O'Hara, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just a few comments, really. This, in answer to your question, actually, the reason I think there's comments from further afield, there's some vehicles in part of linked to the Heritage Museum, so I think that's why you've had comments from further afield. I think that's where that relationship comes from. The other thing is, you said the CCTV, Richard, might be upgraded. What is that based on in terms of, because the CCTV images aren't always the greatest, so I would imagine it wouldn't be upgrading. And if so, do we know where it would be resited? Would it have a view over the actual club, so that, because normally that locked up of an evening, they used to lock the toilets and the park at the same time. So as soon as it gets dark, they used to come around and lock it up. So I don't know whether that'll all come in the same as it has in the past. And the other thing was what was I going to ask you about? Oh yeah, in highways, I know that they came back 3 times to ask the questions, but they're talking about displays, and I thought, well, the displays have always been the same, so I didn't quite understand why they then queried the position that was already there in the first place. That seemed quite an anomaly, really. But I would say I do really like the plan. I think it'd be fantastic for Burton. We always have our Christmas light switch on, and that car park is used for the fair, so it gives a greater amount of movement around the area on the Christmas light. But more importantly, we have the farmers market once a month as well, so that gives more parking for people who attend that. So I think it'll be a fantastic community asset. I do like the play area that Scott, you're correct. It has got a few items in there that are for disabled users or less able users, which is really, just do like the idea that it's very free flow, and hopefully vandal-proof, and it'll be standards in good stead for years to come. Richard, do we know who's actually what equipment is actually going in? Which company is it? Is it Hags again, or are we actually using Wicksteed? Do you know?
I don't have that detail, sorry, Councillor.
Okay, all right, that's my only comments, but thank you, and thank you for the presentation. It was brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor. Richard, do you want to clarify on any of the other points that?
Just on the CCTV, obviously, as is covered in the report, they're looking to relocate the camera, which will obviously be helped by this proposal, obviously through removing that ironstone wall that's sort of opening up that area. From the case officer and obviously the sort of discussions, I think it's, if there's a need to upgrade, obviously, the camera when the works are undertaken, obviously the council will potentially look to do that, but that can obviously be done outside of the plan application itself. But there was obviously a realisation that there's a need to ensure that there's good CCTV coverage of the site, and obviously part of the reason for its layout, and obviously the comments from the police, is that it's ensuring that it's a safe and usable area for all visitors.
Chair, may I just ask one more question, or just make one more comment? In Burton, we do have a very active Heritage Society, and they're based down in the Civic Centre in whatever they renamed it, sorry, in Burton. And I think if that building was of significant historical interest, I think that they would have made a greater comment regarding that. So I do agree with our officer's comment that unfortunately it has fell into disrepair, and having been covered in cement, it would be very arduous, I would imagine, to try and save a building such as that, although I very much prefer that we could protect our historic past. But we learn from it, we move on. So and I think that the asset of having that greater space and the greater outdoor space would be fantastic given the times we're living in now. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor. Richard, so no further hands raised. Anyone else wish to comment or speak the application? Okay, so we have an officer's recommendation to approve the application for us. Can I seek a proposer and seconder, please?
I'll propose, Chair.
I'll second.
Councillor O'Hara and Councillor Edwards, thank you. So therefore, I'm going to ask Callum to conduct a vote on the officer's recommendation to approve the application.
Thank you, Chair. So if after I've called your name, if you could indicate if you are for or against the officer's recommendation to approve the application, or if you wish to abstain from the vote. Again, starting with Councillor Adams.
Looks like she's gone.
Lost Councillor Adams. Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Morton.
4.
Thank you. Councillor O'Hara.
4, please.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Fairland.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Titcombe.
4.
Thank you. That's votes for Chair and 1 vote abstention from Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much, Callum. So the application is therefore approved. So that takes us to item 5.3, KT 2020-0322, 3 Rockingham Way in Burton Latimer. There is a slight update on this one. Richard, did you want to read that out while David sorts the presentation?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, it should be noted that a single-storey element of the extension has been built under permitted development rights, and I'll cover that obviously during the presentation. Okay, so this is the application at 3 Rockingham Way. It's an application for a 2-storey rear extension. So this is the site, the east of Burton Latimer, within the David Wilson development off Higham Road. This is the application site here on the corner of Rockingham Way. The objections come from the 2 properties to the northwest, so number 5 and number 7 Rockingham Way, as is covered in the report. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. That's better. So this is, so here we've got the application site. So in the centre there, in the sort of grey hashing, you'll see the area where the extension is located. To the southwest of the extension is the double garage of the application site. You've then got their rear garden, and then you've got the first of the objectors at number 5 Rockingham Way, and you can see that they've got a single detached garage separating themselves from the application site. Next slide, please. So this is the proposal. As it's covered in the report, it originally came in as a balcony, a ground floor extension with a balcony, and it was that balcony in particular that caused the comments that are before us this evening. As is covered in the report, officers raised concerns about that balcony. The scheme's then been revised to the 2-storey extension. We've then reconsulted with neighbours, but importantly, obviously, they haven't come forward with any additional comments on this proposal. So the comments all relate in particular to that balcony element, which has been removed, obviously, from the proposal. So you'll see at the sort of top right of that plan, slightly small, unfortunately, but that's the existing floor plans of the site. And then sort of top left, you'll see the ground floor proposal, which has obviously been built under permitted development rights. But importantly, at the top left, you'll see the first floor accommodation. Importantly, I'll point out on that plan that on the top of that, the extension, you'll see there's 2 small windows in the en-suites, which are both proposed to be obscure glazed, and we've conditioned that. And that's important because obviously the concerns of the neighbour, as is highlighted in the report. Next slide, please. Sorry, Dave, can you go back a slide? Sorry. Yeah, so at the bottom of the slide, just on the bottom right, you'll see the elevations of the proposal. So you can see that it's a flat roof proposal, not visible from the public realm. But importantly, obviously, that flat roof proposal in itself is important because it obviously limits the height of the structure and therefore limits the impact of it on its neighbours. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the application site. Here we're standing within the garden, we're looking back towards the site. You'll see the extension that's been completed under permitted development rights. So that's been double checked by officers, the sizing in accordance with the standards. So there's no issues with that. There's nothing that we can consider or any sort of powers that we have about that element. You'll see here to the right hand side that's the back of the double garage at the application site. Next slide, please. So this is taken from the application site, just sort of standing at the back of what would have been the balcony area, looking north towards number 5 Rockingham Way, and then beyond to number 7, who's also objected to the proposal. So you'll see the slight change in levels, but you see there's a distance between the application and that garden itself. There's a slight change in levels, but importantly, obviously, with the flat roof and those obscured windows on that elevation, the officers don't have any obviously concerns about overlooking or loss of privacy, which were the key concerns from those neighbours. We've also ensured through the condition that there's no, as well as those windows being retained, that there's no ability to insert any additional windows in those elevations without needing planning permission. Next slide, please. So here you were looking, importantly, we're looking to the west towards the neighbouring property at number 1 Rockingham Way, and this, you see the double garage separating the two sides. But importantly, you can see that that's got a blank elevation. So given the separation distance, which is the width of that garage and a little bit more, the two side windows wouldn't cause any sort of amenity impacts or any concerns because of that relationship and because of that blank elevation of the neighbour. Next slide, please. So this is the final photograph. So this is panning round. So this is looking across from the sort of rear of the, what would have been the balcony area, but obviously sort of towards the rear of the first floor element. There you can see the rear of the garage and obviously the fence in the sort of foreground, which separates the application site from number 5 Rockingham Way. And because of obviously the comments that we've raised, the concerns during the process, the applicant has obviously secured those windows as obscure glazing, and that's the key reason why we think the scheme is acceptable. So officers have recommended the scheme for approval subject to those safeguarding conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Richard. So I've only got one written statement submitted by Stephen Hicks, who's the applicant. So I'm going to read that out now on his behalf. I'd like to take this opportunity to reassure you of our planning proposal to extend our dwelling and hopefully settle the concerns that we've raised thus far. In line with planning laws, we've extended the ground floor of our property under permitted development. The ground floor space has enabled us to square off our L-shaped property. In doing so, it has left us with a flat roof, which has created a viable opportunity to extend our home further. Our original application included for balcony access from the front, the first floor bedrooms. However, we have since submitted any balcony proposal and respectfully amended our application due to previously concerns raised by our neighbours. Our amended policy includes the following. 1, extending bedroom 4. The existing window overlooking neighbouring gardens will be removed and relocated to overlook our private driveway. 2, addition of the ensuite to serve bedroom 4 to be located in the proposed first floor extension area. Obscure windows to be used in bathroom, which will omit any views into the garden area. Window to be used for bathroom ventilation only. 3, relocating ensuite to bedroom 1 to be located in the proposed first floor extension area. Obscured windows to be used in bathroom, which will omit any views into the garden area. Window to be used for bathroom ventilation only. Currently, an obscure window already looks out to the neighbouring gardens. Overall, this amended design will result in enhanced privacy for our neighbouring gardens and residents by omitting a large window from bedroom 4. In result, the only windows facing out will be obscure glaze to serve bathrooms. We do not want our neighbours to feel overlooked or feel that their privacy could be compromised. Therefore, our amended plan is sympathetic to all, including number 5 and 7 Rockingham Way. We hope this design settles any concerns that our neighbours may have in respect to our proposal. Please do reconsult the amended floor plan, which will illustrate our design. Many thanks, Stephen Hicks of 3 Rockingham Way. So that's written statement there from the applicant, Stephen Hicks. So that concludes our speakers, and I see Councillor Thurland's hands raised. So Councillor Thurland, to start the debate, please.
Yeah, Richard, there's a couple of anomalies on here because I can see the application number, but there's no dates whatsoever. I'm not sure when this comes in because it says there was, because of the COVID lockdown, that there was no site visit, which I don't understand that bit, because I went round there the other day, and from the road you will be able to see this. It says in the report that it won't be visible from the road, but if you stand looking towards the back, you will definitely see that big extension from the roadway. And there's also no comments from Burton Latimer Town Council, which I'm surprised at. And as I say, there's no dates. When did this application come in? Because I'm surprised that the one before there was a site visit, this one there isn't. And then the other thing, when that extension goes up, there's going to have 2 little windows, but it's actually covering 3 windows. And I know Chair read out the comments, but I can't see where those 3 big windows are actually going to be compensated by the 2 little obscure ones. So I know there's quite a few anomalies there. If you could address those, thank you.
Yeah, Richard, if you'd like to respond, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look up the date of the application. Yeah, obviously, when on site visits in general, obviously we're undertaking them. We have been undertaking them, you know, as they've been required. Obviously, in certain instances, and depending on the timings of applications, on some of the applications we haven't done physical site visits, but obviously we've had access to photographing and our own web mapping. So we've had, the majority of applications are still having site visits, but there'll be a small number where there hasn't been physical site visits because of sort of timings and obviously restrictions, and potentially what's going on in certain sites with certain residents and their restrictions, let's say.
But you visited this site and seen it from the road. So when did it come in then?
I'm just trying to look up that. I don't have access to the file, unfortunately. So
right, okay.
Bear me a second.
Yeah, because it says there's a flat roof, which isn't in keeping with the neighbouring. Because I mean, it's a really nice estate up there with some quite nice looking houses. But if you stand in Rockingham Way, outside number 5 and 7 on that corner, you will actually see that over the wall. You can't miss it. I don't really think that is, with that flat roof, is really going to enhance that neighbourhood. And as I say, with the windows, I'm just concerned with that as well.
Sorry, bear me a second, sorry. Yeah, I've got the application. Sorry, everything electronics. The application came in late May.
So between May and now, you're saying nobody could have done a site visit when there was no lockdown? I'm just asking the question, because I think when you go to it, you can actually see it from the road. This is going to be quite a big development going up with a flat roof, which just does not keep in with whatever there's at the moment.
Yeah, the key obviously with a flat roof is, as covered in the report, that if you get glimpse views from the road, the key about the flat roof is that it's obviously to the rear of the property, and therefore not something that's appreciable in the public realm as much as the front and the side elevation of the property. But the benefit of that flat roof is that obviously in its height, it's limiting its height so that it doesn't therefore, with a pitch roof, cause additional height and therefore additional potential impacts for those neighbours, given the change in ground levels between this and those 2 neighbours to the north. So in this instance, there's potentially some benefit to having the flat roof in that it limits the overall height of it rather than having a full pitched roof.
Oh yeah,
albeit as covered in the report that design-wise, we would, on a standard site, we would potentially, consider that a pitch roof more in keeping with the existing design would be more acceptable, but that's not to say that a sort of flat roof wouldn't be.
No. But I think the pitch roof in this instance would be better for the environment, for the locality, and a flat roof is notoriously difficult to keep that on. And also, I think, yes, it might minimise the bulk, but the bulk is going to be there in the building itself with just an ugly flat roof. And as I say, if it came in May, I'm really surprised that we couldn't do, it's just a comment, I'm surprised we couldn't do a site visit. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor. Councillor O'Hara, please.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a comment really following on with what Councillor Thurland said. It's just more a concern because I think it's because of the lay of the land more than anything that you can see it. And I think in keeping with the characteristic of that street and that area, it might have been better having it some kind of pitch roof. Flat roofs are never conducive to anything good. They always leak. It doesn't matter who does them. They invariably over time will leak. And I just think it takes away from that area, especially given the location of it. My only concern is that I know that you've had comments from number 7 about their loss of privacy, and I know there's a house in between, if you like. But given the scale of it, Richard, I just think it become overbearing because of where it is. I know it's at the back; it's not in the public realm as such, but I think it is overbearing for the size of the building that they're actually putting on, the extension they're putting on. Just because of how it will look when it's up, and I do agree that it would have looked better with a proper roof on it rather than a flat one. But I guess they're not true planning considerations in terms of where we can go from here with it. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. But I think it's not conducive to future-proofing the house, if I'm honest. Especially given that you can put solar panels on. Or but better than retrofitting, if you see what I mean. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor. And Councillor Edwards, please.
Yeah, I have to agree. I do think it's a bit overpowering on that area. And if you go back to the photos with the 2 houses next door, and whilst I appreciate they're having frosted glass rather than clear glass, which I do appreciate, when those windows are open, we're going back to the picture.
Yeah.
Thank you.
David,
Slowly.
David is
no worries
for you now, Councillor.
Thank you. Yeah, it just seems still to be really overpowering on those 2 houses next door to them. Thank you, committee host. I've lost my complete train of thought now, though. But yeah, I do think it's overpowering for that area, and it's not really in keeping with that area at all. And just one other point that Councillor Thurland raised about Burton Latimer. I'm really surprised that Burton Latimer haven't issued a comment or even a no comment. And I do remember raising this a few meetings ago about Burton Latimer Town Council. I think there was something in Barton that they shared with Burton, and nothing had come back from them either. Not that I'm not 100% sure, but we are definitely sure that they were consulted. David, can we go to the other? Yeah, that one. Sorry, that one.
Yeah.
That is really that is really overlooking, in fact, 3 of those houses, really. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Richard, did you want to clarify on Councillor Edwards' point about the consultation as well, if you're able?
Sorry, Chair, helps if I'm not unmuted. I'm just trying to have a look on our systems and trying to double check if they were consulted. I could probably do that if people want to just discuss for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, Councillor Thurland, did I see your hand?
Yes, yeah, you did, because I was going to ask that, because I have asked a couple of councillors on the town council whether they've actually seen this application, and nobody can recall having seen it. And that, I think that picture there gives, that is the flat roof as it is now, and you're going to have another 7-8 feet high to get that room in. and losing all those other windows, I really do think this is overdevelopment on that piece of land, and definitely out of keeping with the rest of the estate. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Morton, did I see your hand raised?
Yeah. I was just looking at this on Google Earth, actually. And, you know, when you look at it, it seems to be surrounded, if you look from the front of the house, you could hardly see it because there's a garage at the side. And in some ways, I disagree with my colleagues, just from looking at it from Google Earth. Because it seems to be nestled in the little L shape within it. And because there's a garage on the one side of it, I don't think it's going to be that seen much from the road anyway. Obviously, a sloping roof might be better, but I don't think it's really. The only thing I would think of is maybe it's, as you look at the picture you've got there may be some overlooking of that garden. But having said that, if that wasn't there, the fact is you're actually, before that was there, you're looking out the window anyway, overlooking the gardens. It's always been overlooked, but so I can't see the point about overdevelopment, because when you look at it in Google Earth and you look at the other houses, their location, I think you get a better view from the plan, which I don't know if you can pull that up on the screen. It might help.
Chair, can I just come back on that part? Those windows, the existing windows now are way further back. When that extension's up, they're going to come forward. It's the bulk of the building, and those windows will be 8, 9, 10 feet nearer though the rest of that street.
But they are opaque because it's a bathroom.
Thanks for those comments, councillors. Richard, did you want to?
Yeah,
respond on the consultation?
Yeah, I've managed to find in our systems. Yes, we did consult the town council. It doesn't look like we had a response, but we did consult the town council according to our database.
What date was that, Richard?
The date I was looking at was the 29th of June.
29th of June, thank you.
Richard, Chair, may I ask Richard something about it?
You can, yes. Do we need the presentation up, any more colleagues, or are we content that we've seen that?
Can you leave it there one moment? Richard,
Yeah.
When you got the town council, who does it go to? Does it go to the clerk, or does it go to the chair of England? That's what normally.
Let me just have a look for you, sorry. Bear with me a second. It's gone to the clerk.
Okay, so if this went ahead, this extension went ahead, the windows, not only are they occluded, they're not openers, are they? Are they there? Did you say that? Well, in the report it says they're ventilation only, aren't they?
Bear a second. I'm trying to get up and see people. That's it. Yeah. So what we've done through the condition is through permitted development rights on side windows. They have to, on a normal property, if you wanted to put a side window at first floor, they have to be obscure glazed and non-opening below 1.7 metres. And so we've used similar wording in this. So what that allows for is if you had sort of a very small sort of top light window for a bit of ventilation, because obviously that would be above 1.7 metres above the ground, the finished floor level, you could have that, but any part of the window can't open below 1.7 metres. So there's no opportunity to, open a window and peer out into those neighbours, but you could potentially have a sort of small top light on those small ensuite windows, which would obviously allow ventilation into those rooms, which obviously people consider is desirable in those locations.
My final question is, if they decided to go, whatever happens tonight, say it goes through, but you put on a condition on it, say, well, you can't condition it. If they decided to put a different roof on rather than a flat roof and have Velux windows in, that would then solve the problem with overlooking, or is that an insane idea? I just think once it goes up another level, I'm not so bothered about the street scene because it is round the back and it is turn and have. So I get what Councillor Morton was saying, but I think it is just the sheer volume of the elevation that is going to look down those gardens And given the fact that most of us are staying at home nowadays, I would hate my home. I would hate the fact, I've bought a home and you just don't know anymore, do you? It's just one of those things. And I suppose it's personal as well. But from a planning perspective, I think it is a little bit overbearing on those other two properties.
Yeah. Chair, can I just come back on
one final point, Councillor, and then I'm keen to move this forward.
Yeah.
Quite a robust debate.
Richard, is the plans for the side of it, 'cause they're bringing forward what will be a bedroom and an ensuite, I think. So where will the windows, those three that are going to be obscured by the building, where are they actually going to be replaced by? Because, we all know about condensation, things like that in a room. And if you're saying they can only have a small window for ventilation, I'm just concerned that we're getting rid of 3 windows that are really important to a building, obviously, otherwise they wouldn't have been built like it.
Yep.
And just having 2 of those little obscure ones with opening just 1.7 metres above.
Okay, yeah, if you look at the plan in the agenda, it's probably easier on page 36D.
Yeah, I've got that.
The top left plan. So obviously you can see the top left of that picture, you can see where the en-suites are. So if we talk around that bedroom one at the top right, obviously that's got an existing window looking east towards Rockingham Way, but that would also have that on the right hand side of the en-suites, which would obviously be obscure glaze. So that's got a normal window in that bedroom one. And then on the bedroom, from looking at the application, bedroom 4, which is the one that's closest to obviously the extension, you've got...
There's an infill, is that right?
Yeah, you've got 2 windows there that are not obscured because they're looking across that double drive towards the neighbour that didn't have any windows in their elevation. So you've got 2 normal windows there providing daylight. And then obviously you've got the ensuite that's in the corner of the extension with the obscured window. And then obviously the two bedrooms at the front are remain unchanged. So both bedrooms have got, what you would call normal windows, but also obviously those obscured windows in their enhanced ensuites.
Yeah. So when you open those windows, you will be able to look out when the openings are open for ventilation. You will be able to look out over into the gardens.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't, because obviously the bit that can open is only above 1.7 meters, and unless you're my height or above, you wouldn't be able to see out that window. So the 1.7 meters is a normal person above a normal person's eye level. So you'll be able to open a sort of top light and look horizontally across or up towards the sky. But you wouldn't have a normal window that you could open out and look down towards.
No, just the ventilation.
Yeah, just a little top light sort of window. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for confirming there. So I feel like we've said all we can say really on this application. So I'm now going to move to the recommendation, mindful obviously of what everyone said. So we do have an officer's recommendation to approve the application. So can I seek a proposal and second it for that, please? Councillor Rowley.
I'll propose that. I'll second it.
Morton, to take your pick. Thank you very much. So Callum, to now conduct a vote on the officer's recommendation to approve the application, please.
Thank you, Chair. So if after I've called your name, if you could indicate if you're for or against the officer's recommendation to approve the application, or if you wish to abstain from the vote. Starting with Councillor Adams.
I'm going to abstain because I missed some of the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Edwards.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Morton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor O'Hara.
Okay, please.
Against, thank you. Councillor Rowley.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Furland.
Against.
Against. And Councillor Titcombe.
For.
Thank you. That is 4 votes for Chair, 3 against and 1 abstention.
Okay, thanks to the Callum. That application is therefore approved. Thank you very much indeed, everyone, this evening, officers, members, and members of the public watching this on YouTube.